The movie opens up with a group of athletes preparing for an Olympic final, and it's announced that it might be the last race for Hong Kong's multi-time gold medal winner, So Wa Wai. In a climactic moment, Wai takes off his hearing aids, recalls his mother's message, closes his eyes, and runs. The scene then flashes back to 1981, when Wai's mother, Mrs. So, rushes to the hospital with her baby boy. After a long wait, the doctor informs her that the baby has a rare condition called hemolytic anemia, affecting his brain functions due to the difference in blood groups. The doctors recommend exchanging transfusions, and Wai's mother agrees without hesitation. In 1985, Wai and Mrs. So again consult a doctor about the former's muscle development. They discover that Wai's muscles aren't growing and functioning as they should. Despite her best efforts, including selling watches to buy hearing aids for Wai, they live in a modest apartment in Hong Kong. Later, while Wai's mother is drying clothes on the balcony, Wai watches other children play, making his mother sad. One day at her workplace, Wai loses his hearing aid. His mother halts the factory operation and searches frantically, but her employer scolds her. Furthermore, after a while, Wai goes missing, but his mother finds him buried under a pile of cloth. In a touching scene, she sobbingly urges him to walk and places him on a machine, begging him to wake up and walk. Miraculously, after her tears, Wai awakens and tries to take a few steps, creating a heartwarming moment for her. Later in the evening, Wai's parents talk about the non-genetic disease their son is suffering from and decide to have another child to take care of Wai when they turn old. The scene then fast-forwards to 1993, when Mrs. So returns home with her younger son, Kung, who adores Wai. The brothers enjoy playing together. Right then, Mrs. So notices a sports organization poster for athletes with disabilities and thinks of taking Wai there for training. Meanwhile, Wai goes around his neighborhood giving out God of Fortune stickers and collects some money. Suddenly, a group of kids confronts him, claiming he needs their permission to sell anything there. Kung witnesses this and informs his mother about Wai being bullied. Mrs. So then immediately rushes out and shouts at the boys from the balcony, giving Wai a chance to grab his money back and escape. To everyone's surprise, Wai runs incredibly fast, leaving the boys unable to catch him. His mother is astonished by his speed, and she decides to admit Wai to the training center. In the next scene, Wai and Mrs. So go to the training center for registration. Initially, they face resistance due to Wai's age, but with his mother's insistence, the officer agrees. Inside the training center, Wai is thrilled to see so many people running. During a friendly relay practice, Wai joins them in the middle and finishes in second place. Coach Fong is impressed with his speed and approaches them. He requests Mrs. So to bring him for practice daily, as he sees potential in Wai. The mother-son duo becomes very happy to get the offer and agrees. Later, while cutting Wai's nails, Mrs. So asks if he's comfortable competing against older, stronger athletes. Wai confidently responds that running is easy for him, and he is happy to do that. However, the next day, Wai faces a tough challenge as Coach Fong asks the runners to do 7 laps without rest. Wai struggles, and his mother offers him water, which angers the coach. He then warns her to follow the rules or jeopardize her child's success. In the following scene, Wai meets Fong's sister, Jill, who advises him to follow her brother's orders, but at his own pace. They discuss another talented runner, Tung, rumored to be faster than a train over 100 meters. In the next training session, Coach Fong challenges Wai to run 20 laps non-stop. Wai accepts, but ends up running slowly. After practice, Fong asks why he didn't finish, and Wai is not allowed to leave until he completes the laps. At this moment, Fong explains that he selected Wai for his quick strides and encourages him to gather more speed, promising to work on it soon. On his way home, senior athlete Guy shares a story about Coach Fong's past. He mentions that during the last Paralympics, they missed winning a gold medal in the relay due to a silly mistake, which devastated Coach Fong. Moreover, Fong had to quit running due to a back injury. During training the next day, Wai loses balance on a ladder. Coach Fong emphasizes that Wai's 100-meter record needs to be less than 15 seconds to be competitive in the upcoming Paralympics. He then suggests a specific position for Wai in the relay, upsetting Tung, who demands Wai run under 15 seconds to keep his spot, or else he'll quit. Despite his efforts, Wai can't meet the goal, leaving him sad and in tears. His mother, aware of the situation, advises him to run hard to vent his frustration instead of crying. The following day, Wai and his mother run together, with the former showing great enthusiasm. He even competes with an incoming train and receives a beef burger while his brother gets a cheese bun, leading to a quiet reaction from Kung. At the training arena, Wai struggles to run 100 meters in under 15 seconds. While Tung is watching this from outside, Mrs. So arrives and tells him that her son admires his speed and wants to be like him. Hearing this, Tung is inspired to help Wai. He then enters the field, grabs a baton, and encourages Wai to run. With Tung motivating him and emphasizing running fast, Wai finally achieves the target, completing the race in less than 15 seconds. The scene then shifts to 1996, and the team is on their way to the airport, headed for the Olympics in Atlanta. During the journey, they discuss the meager pay for Paralympic athletes compared to other Olympic athletes. Arriving at the Atlanta Olympic House, Wai hesitates, but his mother encourages him, reminding him that even though she's not physically with him, she's watching his performance. The Olympics kick off, and the tension rises as the athletes prepare to compete. In an electrifying moment, Wai triumphs, winning a gold medal and surpassing both the USA and Japan. This is a dream come true for Wai and his team, as they become their country's first Paralympic gold medalists. Back in Hong Kong, Wai rushes to hug his mother upon arrival. Reporters interview them, and Mrs. So stresses the importance of fair pay for Paralympic athletes, advocating for equal compensation as other athletes. At home, as Mrs. So trims her son's toenails, Wai shows her the medal he won and mentions his grandfather's words about her never having gold. He then expresses his desire to give her as much gold as he can. These touching words from her son make Mrs. So emotional. Year after year, Wai keeps winning gold medals, growing into adulthood. In the 2004 Paralympics, he triumphs again, breaking his own world record and earning recognition from the Hong Kong government. During a meal with the team, Mrs. So observes Wai and Jill playfully interacting, which brings a smile to her face. The following morning, on the railroad tracks, Mrs. So asks Wai if he likes Jill, but he walks away, pretending not to hear. As a train approaches, Wai takes off his hearing aid and prepares to run. He then astonishingly surpasses the train in a 100-meter dash. Mrs. So is taken aback by what she just witnessed, and so she hugs Wai, congratulating him on his remarkable achievement. In 2006, Mrs. So, Wai, and Kung rush to the hospital as their father has had a major accident, leading to financial troubles. Wai decides to work as a courier to pay the hospital bills, but his mother stops him, instead asking Kung to quit basketball and care for their father. This angers Kung, and Mrs. So says she'll find work to cover the expenses. At school, Kung sells Wai's medals to friends for money. Following this, Mrs. So gets a call from the principal, learning about Kung's actions. She scolds him when he returns home, upset that he sold his brother's hard-earned gold medals. Kung argues, expressing his feelings of being neglected since childhood. Despite the disagreements, Wai believes things will get better and starts working as a courier. One day during recess, Wai meets Coach Fong, who offers him the role of a torchbearer, representing Hong Kong in the Olympics. Wai initially refuses due to the lower pay compared to his courier job and the government support he'll get. But we later learn that he secretly wants to participate in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. In the next scene, Mrs. So contacts Victor, a manager for athletes, to inquire about any advertisements for Wai. Victor mentions that he's heard Wai quit running and can only manage if he considers going to the Beijing Olympics. After this, Mrs. So encourages Wai to return to training and tells him about an upcoming advertisement they'll perform. Next, Wai resumes training with Coach Fong and simultaneously shoots a commercial to earn money. The constant commercials make Wai tired and lose focus on running. Mrs. So realizes this and asks Victor to stop proposing more ads. However, when Victor arrives with a tempting deal, she ultimately accepts it due to the offered fee. The filming process of the ad begins, and the director asks Wai to act in a way that makes him seem silly and stutter. This makes Wai feel really sad, and he eventually walks away from the set. His mother follows him, suggesting that he should complete the shoot and do as the director says. On their way home, Mrs. So tells Wai that she'll take time off from his training session because there's a TV interview scheduled for the next day. Wai gets angry because he feels that the filming is interfering with his practice. Mrs. So suggests that he slightly reduce his practice time to earn some money. Here, Wai remembers his childhood when his mother used to stop him from running a little bit. Things have changed now, leading to a heated argument between them before Wai walks away. The next day, Victor and the team wait for Wai at the shooting location. Mrs. So tries to call Wai several times, but he doesn't answer. Meanwhile, Wai spends his time practicing and talking to Jill. Suddenly, Mrs. So arrives and scolds him for not picking up her calls. She also refers to Jill as his girlfriend and implies that he can't express her feelings to her. Jill remains quiet but clarifies to Mrs. So that she's not interested in Wai romantically. She then leaves the scene, enraging Wai as he feels that his mother couldn't keep his secret. Wai believes that his mother has always treated him like a disabled person and that she had another child, Kung, because of his disability. Hearing all this, Mrs. So admits that being a mother of a disabled person is tough due to societal blame. They both cry, and Wai leaves the field. In the following scene, Mrs. So gives Coach Fong a packet of wine and asks him to take care of Wai during the Olympics. She explains that she won't be able to attend this time. The scene then fast-forwards to the Olympic events, where Wai can't spot his mom in the crowd. This affects his performance, and he finishes third in the 100-meter race and sixth in the 400-meter race. He is really sad and feels like his sports career might be over. After a few days, while Wai is practicing running, Mrs. So surprises him and asks him to follow her. She comforts him about the losses and tells him that everything will be fine. The scene then jumps to the present year, 2008. Wai is on the field, ready to run for his country. Just like always, he searches for his mom in the middle of the crowd. Fortunately, she signals that she's watching him, and he gets ready to race. This time, Wai takes off his hearing aid and listens to his inner voice, which tells him to imagine his mom waiting for him at the finish line. As the race begins, we also see a parallel of the original Wai running to the finish line. This time, Wai manages to finish the race in first place, setting another world record. The sight of him winning sends chills down everyone's spine, and they erupt in cheers. People are thrilled with Wai's success as he wins the gold medal once again for his country. The movie ends with Wai sharing a smile with his mom, and we learn that the real Wai, who won the competition, still holds the Olympic record for this category.